Voices from the Heart of Gotham. The undergraduate oral history collection at Guttman Community College has uncovered the New York experience through the eyes of immigrants and working class communities of color. Narratives are collected by trusted loved ones, which provoke stories and memories that could only be evoked due to the intimacy between interviewers and interviewees. We, the 8 student researchers before you today, embody the diversity of our city and our college. Our project dives into the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and immigrant communities that Guttman students come from, that we come from, to ask, who are these people so influential to the character of our city? What obstacles have they faced, sacrifices have they made, and dreams have they pursued?
Created by the intergenerational collaboration between student, faculty, and staff, this work seeks to democratize the production of knowledge by empowering community college students, largely deriving from immigrants' households, to shape the narrative told about their community and their generation.
Through this work, we have become the owners of our own destiny. We are owners of history. We are able to tell our own stories. Nobody is doing it for us.
Because like me, most of the interviewers from Guttman are immigrants or people of color themselves. They design better questions informed by their own experience and could emphasize with the immigrant of BIPOC interviewer in ways that cultivated a sense of unity through shared struggle.
I feel like everyone censors themselves to a certain extent, but if you're being interviewed by someone who looks like you or can relate to your life experience, you're just more likely to open up, and I feel like those things give the project lots of good merit. This work matters to the Guttman community because Guttman has always been a community college that really wants to advocate for its students. Since Guttman has a population that is majority people of color, and most of our interviews are interviewing a lot of other Black and POC people, that it's just something that hits really close to home, like the atmosphere that we've built at Guttman.
New York City is one of the most diverse places on the planet. And I think when people hear all of these interviews about people in New York City, BIPOC and immigrant listeners can particularly relate to it. It could give them the inspiration to talk more about their own experiences. They don't even have to be immigrants or people of color. They could just be regular white folks living in America. For instance, Carmen Castro, an immigrant from Puerto Rico, describes her struggles when she moved there that wouldn't exactly be considered the average American experience. They don't pay me not a penny. I had to be washing clothes all morning from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and there was no food, no nothing. They treat me like a dog. When people hear these stories of people like Carmen Castro, it can open up a whole new world to them and show them the struggles of people to whom they usually don't relate.
Ignorance is a big reason why people have prejudice about other groups. This work allows us to educate everyone about the struggle and experience of immigrant and community of color. So as an immigrant from Bangladesh, going simply by his first name, Alex, he explained 9/11 had a tremendous effect on me. I felt like everything I accomplished had crashed all of a sudden in that 1 year. I felt like everyone had forgotten how to accept and embrace the difference of community. Once you heard the ways, the dehumanization of immigrants, in this case Muslim immigrant after 9/11, scared them, it become harder not to see immigrants like Alex as deserving of love and kindness, just like everyone else.
Hearing about the experiences and struggles of everyday New Yorkers opened my eyes to the importance of unity within and between communities. We could have totally different backgrounds, but the struggles that we face can be very similar. I definitely think this work shifted my perspective and made me have a new respect for young adults living through the pandemic in such challenging times, and for young people standing up for their beliefs, especially those who were protesting during the pandemic. I was blown away by the commonality of bravery expressed by so many interviewees, putting themselves at risk during the racial uprisings and fighting for a better future, despite the threat of an overly aggressive police response. Guttman alumni Ariadna Vieda explained, I went to 4 protests and they were bad. Even though I was trying to stay as peaceful as I could, it was bad. It was like a mixture of emotions. I caught myself crying so many times. I was just like, this is too much, but it has to be done. This work has given a platform to those standing up for what they believe in is right, even when it is hard to achieve that goal.
There was a specific transcript that stood out to me that I was working on, Monica Thaluska. Watching her progression of learning where to draw her boundaries when it came to her exposure to Black trauma was really insightful. She explained coming to the realization that even though these moments are important, it is still just as important for Black people to take a step back, and that doing so is not a detriment to your character or your level of care. She says, I've come to the realization that's what's best for me right now is to stay off of social media as much as I can. And especially when it's regarding Black trauma, all the trauma that's going on in the world. And I realize that I need to do what's best for me. And that being because everybody will cope with whatever is going on around the world differently. Now, just because you don't see somebody posting on social media when things are going on in the world, that does not mean they're unaware. They're just choosing the way they acknowledge the power, but also keep themselves sane.
I always thought that being an immigrant was something that I shouldn't really be proud of. It was like a burden because of all the obstacles we had to face. I never realized that there's power in the struggles that we face. I saw myself in Jeraine Nieves Morales' story when she said, I've always had a hard time with my identity because I don't really fit in wherever I go. But we can use these lessons and feelings to help create a better world for future generations. We can create a safe space and for future generations and for us when we're much older.
NYC's history of systematic violence against Black communities and powerful movements of resistance position our city as a site for critical racial history. For us, students at CUNY, our home has become a focal point in the struggle for Black lives. Given the experiences up in our social networks and those of our peers, we realized these testimonies were vital to challenging the white supremacist and nativist systems that founded the United States and have proven central to the shaping of our city. In the aftermath of highly publicized incidents of police brutality, we will unveil and honor the pain and perseverance of a largely working class communities of color as they grappled with their place in society, often taking to the streets and their devices, demanding a more just home.
America has been a land of immigrants since the first day British colonizers arrived at Jamestown, but it has never been a home to all immigrants. Immigrants' youth of color are often persecuted for their ethnic identities. Tigida Fadiga, who was born in Senegal, West Africa, shared her experience. Amidst the judgment-free environment where I wasn't judged or violated for who I am. Senegal is culturally diverse with almost 40 different languages, yet Tigida didn't experience the same level of judgment in her native country. Racism has always been embraced and often celebrated in the United States. Youth immigrants experience racism not only on the street, it reached the houses of learning. Sayara Udin, an immigrant youth, shared her experience of bullying and racism from middle school. She stated, in the past, I have been called ISIS, Osama, and a terrorist. Middle schoolers are not nice, and they forget that people come in all variation, not just one. Sadaf Majeed, who also migrated to US at a very young age, shared similar experience when she was bullied for wearing hijab. When I was in middle school, I remember my classmates once said to me on Halloween, "What are you dressing up as? A terrorist?" I heard many ignorant comments from ignorant people, and because of these comments, I was actually afraid to wear handcuff or hijab. Racist stereotypes such as these are harmful and traumatizing for immigrant youth, yet they are deeply ingrained in the fabric of American life.
Voices from the Heart of Gotham has documented multiple accounts from a friend of a friend or a family member that are Black or POC individuals feeling unsafe in America. Mm-hmm. This collection highlighted instances where people express feeling helpless, listening to the stories of harm come to their loved ones, and sitting with the fact that nothing can be done. Kelly continues to recount the differences in raising Black and brown children to prepare and best protect them from dangers they may encounter someday. I have not experienced a lot at the hands of police, but I've witnessed it, and I have. Certainly raising a Black child. I have seen it. I've experienced it in the sense of the way that we have to have the talk, which means something different for parents of Black and brown children. And that is the talk about how you deal with police. Numerous
Numerous individuals live in racist systems without even realizing it, which in many ways allow racism to continue to persist. BIPOC residents of NYC frequently experience discrimination in school, employment, in the neighborhood, or even places of worship. DeKalb Baptiste, a 28-year-old from Freeport, Long Island, stresses the significance of institutional racism against African Americans and other minority groups in New York. I'm just fed up, and someone of African American descent or any type of minority commits a crime, why are we being penalized?
This divide in treatment extends to protests as well. Sierra Uden conveys this treatment split by saying, I think it's sad to see how badly people of color are treated when they peacefully protest versus how white people protested on January 6th at the Capitol. You didn't see rubber bullets or tear gas when armed white people invaded the Capitol. David Burke hypothesized that the outcome would have been different if the Capitol riot had included individuals of color. Burke asserts, I do believe if that was a group of Black folks entering the Capitol, I do believe that the repercussions would have been much more severe. I don't think they would have been able to make it home to their families and have dinner at 6 p.m. as those Trump supporters did.
The way I will explain the oral history project is students' investigation in their communities to really connect with the small business owners in their communities to hear them out, what are their struggles and the things they are thriving, and how can the community and like the local or federal government help them to succeed in their business.
We met with group members from Cairo, and we went over each of the questions, came up with some of our own, kind of edited the ones that we already had, and made the questions fit for both parts of our projects.
It was fun brainstorming together the different questions and angles that we would want to take for the interviews and research phase.
We were required to conduct research interviews and transcripts for each university to use. This allowed us to be able to compare the built environment of our shops in both New York and Cairo.
On the transcript, it was a little bit cringy to have to go through and like see everything and like have to hear my own voice. So that was nice.
We actually communicated with our partners from New York, and we saw how they reflected on their visits and how we reflected on our visits, and we even answered each other's reflections to see how we think, how we experienced, and how it all went.
Another issue that we did have was understanding of foreign culture. However, by the references provided by our CUNY peers, whether they were visual, audio, or written, we were able to understand everything we needed to.
This project for Guttman, it connected New York City's history and the way it was built, and kind of connected it to what's going on now and how certain businesses are doing based off of prejudice that are built into where they are and the neighborhoods that they were built in.
Intriguing thing I learned from our interview process with Thomas was how he really created a community bond between himself, his business, and the community.
It kind of connected us a little bit more with our neighborhood.
I feel like it was a good experience interviewing my family, because I want to bring honor to my country and my family and like support businesses that Mexicans and like my family created and like engrave their names in history.
Hi, I'm Sama. So I had this personal experience and exposure because I had this kind of protective childhood in a way, if that makes sense. Like I see certain things, I was in a protective family, so you don't get to see the kind of exposure that I got introduced to in this course. So when I got to downtown and I saw my country, my people, I'm like, oh my God, I was so isolated, and it felt quite interesting and amazing from a personal perspective. Things are not as happily bubbly as one would grow up to be.
Both in Cairo and New York City, small business owners and employees have faced a struggle regarding COVID-19, both financially and socially, where some business owners have to close their business.
A lot of the small businesses in New York got really hit hard during the pandemic, especially like immigrant small businesses and like Black owned small businesses. They really got hit harder than anyone else.
So the COVID situation didn't just affect it financially, but also it affected the trust that people had. I mean, the quality of food, people stopped trusting, am I going to go eat outside? So this was another factor that was added to their choice of how they deal with their food. Of course, the health factor affected it completely. And even after the COVID by a little while, like nowadays, the function of the restaurants itself changed regarding the COVID situation.
I also can relate to this as a deli worker. We actually shut down the whole deli. Until now, we still not making sandwiches or anything because of this. Is like the trust. Even if you wear in a mask and have gloves on, people still prefer to cook in the house, and that's like it had the big impact into the to the store financially.
I believe based on like a central idea or common theme of this whole or history project is the fact that when the pandemic hit, customers, they have new ways of buying their products. They have new ways of shopping, which is, for example, online, and that benefited the big business owners because since everything can be consumed online, you don't need to physically go to the stores.
With the shift to online and the financial hardships that happened during that time, people did not care about the jewelry and the outfits and that kind of stuff. So our shops were also affected during the pandemic for this reason.
Well, it was interesting getting to know everyone and like how bodega owners or bodega employees, what they face on a daily basis and how it's more challenging now that the pandemic broke out, how they have to stay on hand with the mask enforcement, making sure everyone stays 6 feet apart, everything is sanitized.
The small businesses, it was extremely hard for them to keep up with a lot of the COVID requirements, especially that there are some customers who just like straight out would refuse or get upset.
Rules and regulation keeps on increasing and being more like restricted to the point where there is misunderstanding and miscommunication in the community, because when these small business owners implement these policies in their stores, the consumers that come in, they feel like they are being like how you say treated in a way that they don't used to it. You know, some of that leads to confrontation between the customers and the business owners.